3, 2, 1, end of test. Keying with a go.
Well, hello there and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. And today this is an interesting one because we're talking about a concept today. We're going to get into the Amerikabomber and a concept with Germany trying to be able to strike the United States that they spent quite a bit of time on, and ultimately the war changed and it was just out of their reach. We'll talk a little bit about that. But first, you know what, Jason, your obsession with bucket hats and different designs.
Oh, this is the worst looking hat I ever saw. Well, you buy a hat like this, I'll bet you get a free bowl of soup, huh?
This one reminds me of Trinidad.
Oh, it looks good on you, though.
I don't know why, Trinidad, but I'm going to go ahead and take it off. We'll donate the cap to the kiddos in our education groups that come in, and they love that stuff. Now, we're talking today about the Amerikabomber, and the big thing about the Amerikabomber was we're going to talk about British, American, and ultimately German philosophies. We'll touch on them. I've talked about the Germans before, so we're not going to spend an inordinate amount of time, but I'm going to use one of the most venerable aircraft to fit in my hands, and that is the B-17. This is an F model, has the Memphis Belle on the front of it. Greg can throw up a plan view of that ME-264, and we can start getting into this. Now, American bombardment, and I'm talking about heavy bombardment, long-range aircraft, goes all the way back into the 1930s. And that is where, if you look at the difference between the Axis powers and the Americans, and let's just put on the British, the Americans and the British had been talking about four-engine aircraft and long-range bombardment for a long time and had been just gradually moving the ball and moving these larger types into production and getting, operational and design information. The Germans, and we're going to talk about the Japanese as well, the Germans had adopted the Blitzkrieg concept, which everybody knows, and because they were really thinking about fighting on the continent of Europe, and continental Europe, and into the steppes, into the Russia, they used aircraft more as directed artillery, and their idea was we don't need to do strategic bombardment. What we're going to do is we're going to use the Stuka, the Ju-87, or a lot of these twins, Ju-88, so on and so forth, as bombers, the Henkel, and we're going to basically hit a point in the line, we're going to blow a hole in it, and then our aircraft will provide close air support as we basically overrun the enemy. That was their idea. It worked really great, but we're going to talk about how that kind of finished out in the long range. And then the Japanese, obviously over water, aircraft carriers are very important. The ability to project long-range power with aircraft carriers. Their view was, hey, I can get close enough to anything I want with an aircraft carrier if I have a number, if I have numerical superiority. They did have some land-based bombers, but again, like the Germans, the bombers were more in a support role. As time progressed and the war started and everything, it became very important, and the Germans and later the Japanese, later in the war, would understand that these long-range bombers were just an ability to disrupt means of production, terrorize the population, just make everybody's life miserable, bomb transportation targets, you name it. And the Germans had nothing like that. And that genesis goes back to what I was talking about, the mid-1930s, where we just had this divergence of opinion. Now, there was a FW a Focke-Wulf 200 Condor that had flown from Berlin to New York in 1938, and the Condor, although not built in massive numbers, again, and it was one of those pseudo, we're going to get around the Treaty of Versailles airplanes, and so it was built as more of an airliner, so it didn't have some of the robust stuff that was needed for a strategic bomber. Now, I will say, for you Condor fans out there, Condor was very effective as a maritime patrol airplane, did very well in maritime interdiction, and it was a good airplane, and no argument there. If it ran into determined fighter opposition, another story. But basically, you could say that about most of the German bombers, unless you're getting into the Ju-88 or something like that, and those airplanes are pretty fast, and fighters that were dealing with them had more of a problem just because the airplanes were so quick. Now, the Germans didn't really get to a strategic decision on an aircraft for a long-range aircraft until it was presented to Hermann Göring, the head of the Luftwaffe, in 1942. The idea was, in that thought process, that they could carry 4.5 tons of bombs. And that was the initial spec. The folks that got into it, all the usual suspects at that point, it was Junkers, Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Horten, and also Heinkel stepped in 1943. So all of the armament manufacturers were chasing this thing, and they saw how lucrative this was. Now, ultimately, we're going to talk about why they weren't successful, but everybody jumped in. One of the things they kicked around a lot was a base, an operating base in the Azores, so where they could get there. And I'm going to talk about, after our break, about also a one-way trip. But first, I'm going to stick this B-17 on its pedal here. I want to talk specifically about the B-17 for a second and their crews, and that is, I want to talk about B-17s that were used in the Pacific. Up to when war broke out, up until late 1942, there were about 165 B-17s that were used in the Pacific. Unlike concentrated bombardment, where the Americans were working up to these big bomber streams and attacks in Europe, the B-17s there, and these were early model aircraft, primarily E's and some F's, were used in smaller raids. They were up against numerically superior Japanese aircraft at that time in the war. And to be quite frank, a lot of their missions were suicide missions. We acquired a purpose-built nose for a B-17E that we found a B-17E crew in New Britain. Michael Carra did when he was over there for Expedition Amelia. There was another one over there, and we're going to use that nose section that we have acquired with the flag from the memorial that we did in the jungle for those two aircraft, and as a testament to those crews. But it's a testament to all of those bomber crews in the Pacific early in the war. Primarily, if you're going against Rabaul, or because they were being pushed back to Port Moresby and in Australia, those missions were primarily suicide missions. So these were incredibly brave crews. And I want to salute them today with a Beta root beer, another pure cane sugar mafia group. That's interesting. Okay. 180 calories. That's a bad boy. I'm trying to go the other direction. Jason, you're killing me here, man. A California cash refund. So you're really laying off the Mojave liquor store backroom purchases. So we got to get you back out there so there's some terror. So we're going to go ahead and open that, and it did fizz, which is exciting. So to all of the strategic bomber crews that were fighting early in the war and basically just trying to hold the line in the Pacific, and specifically to those crews on New Britain that we've memorialized, I want to salute you. Cheers.
But this is the Abita root beer. And I'm just like, what the hell? I'm going to do it, I'm going to try it, and I'm going to talk about it.
That's not bad. You failed. That one's actually good. If I could drink this, I can't, all of it because of the calories, but it's really good. Second sip for those crews. God bless them. Now, they worked on this base in the Azores, and then the bomb load they were talking about was about 6,600 pounds to 14,300 pound bomb load for these aircraft. They came up with a number of different aircraft designs: the ME-264, the Focke-Wulf, the TA-400, the Ju-390, and the Heinkel 277. There are rumors. What they ended up actually building was 3 ME-264s and 2 Ju-390s. Now there is a rumor, Jason, that a 264 got within 12 miles of the U.S. coastline. I have researched that, and it's been debunked, and people can say in the comment section that it's been debunked. I've also heard that it's not been debunked. I would say this: there's no solid proof that one of these, and these were just prototype aircraft, they never made it to production. I find it hard to believe that one of them got that close, and that there isn't very specific evidence of that. But that at least is the rumor mill on that. So take that with a grain of salt. The biggest challenge that they were dealing with was also reliable engines. They were talking about the BMW, the 801E radials, or another, we'll give vintage V12 Jose, you got to find one of these. We gave him a shout out on this last time. The Junkers, the Umo, the 222, that 24-cylinder engine, that engine was incredibly unreliable and would have been a disaster if they put it on the airplane. Just diverging for 1 second, the Germans had a really bad habit of building very effective weapons, but they were incredibly intricate. So German engine manufacturing turned out to be, it was difficult, time-consuming. Ultimately, they didn't have a reliable engine. The Junkers, the 222, that 24-cylinder, as I was just saying, I gave a shout-out to Jose. Lots of power, but not very reliable and very difficult to produce, and even more difficult when the Allies, at this point in the war, in like 1944, this is a technical term, Jason, they're bombing the crap out of them at this point. And so they're after all of their means of production. Now, one of the other things that was considered beyond, as I said, these kind of complicated things, was a parasite aircraft with an HE-177 versus carrying a Du-17. Now, the one thing about that was a one-way trip. So if you got the guys to fly the airplane, they're either dying or they get picked up by a submarine. That was the option, or they get captured. So that wasn't a very reasonable option either. And what ended up happening with the Amerikabomber was the Allies continued their air raids and eventually just made it completely impossible for the Germans to focus on anything long range. But the Germans could have been incredibly dangerous had they had a long-range aircraft, and that is the epitaph of the Amerikabomber. Now, if you are sitting at home and you've been eyeing this is our new B-17 merch. You need one of these. Be the coolest kid in your school, the coolest person on your block, the greatest person in your dart throwing society, pool, whatever. This shirt will also make you 15 miles an hour faster. You need one of these. So click on that link. Christmas is coming up, and Jason will happily weave one of these, take it down to the post office, and mail it out to you. Now, if you came across us on social media, and let's say Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a subscription. We can't grow the channel without that. And I will tell you something that I'm seeing is interesting on the statistics, and I thank you. You are watching these things all the way through. And it's exciting to see the percentage of folks that are continuing to watch Warbird Wednesday, and I appreciate that. The museum is very grateful. Jason and Greg are grateful. So please do that. If you see all this cool stuff around us, I'm standing in front of the 262 replica that we have at the museum next to the Memphis Bell. We can't do all this without your contributions. Please click on that link, send us a few bucks. We can certainly use it for our education programs, and we are grateful. If you're teaching the kids at home, in the link below, the education guides are there. You can print them out. They are free, which is an exciting word, free. You can teach one lesson or an entire semester, entire school year. Go ahead and do that. There are great and fun things in there for the kids to do. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
3, 2, 1, end of test. King was a go.
Rise to the blessed day, all my fears have gone away. I guess this means I'm here to stay. Yeah, I'm ready to fly, ready to fly. Wasn't long ago I shook at the thought of being hooked. But ever since I wrote my book, I'm ready to fly, ready to fly. Come along and join us, we can plug you in a single